All right. I am now joined by Touré Reed, um, the author of Toward Freedom, and Jason Myles, who is the author of a new piece that is out in Sublation Media today. People should check it out. Good. It's no joke or anything. I just, it's a good article. You should read it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
He's got the mustache of triumph in the soul patch.
That's well, no, it's just a mustache. It goes with it. This isn't a. I'll message you in the private chat about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So something, by the way, I should say about this movie that I would not have noticed if not for a joke that Touré made in the chat. I don't know, a day or two ago, is that it's the weirdest fucking thing. There's a point where Patrick Bateman is blowing off the detective, and he's talking about like what his plans are, and he says that the friend he needs to meet for lunch is Cliff Huxtable.
Yeah, and did you notice he's going uptown to see him too? Harlem, going to Harlem soon.
And he was always returning videotapes.
That was a big thing back in the day.
What is this? 87, something like that. Yeah,
but the book's supposed to be in 89.
Really?
Yeah, there was one flaw that I found in the movie, and that's they're having a conversation, and he's talking about all the evils in the world, and he names terrorism. And I honestly believe they wouldn't say terrorism; they would have said communism.
I don't know. I mean, terrorism was a big deal. It was a big
87?
Yeah, absolutely. Iran-Contra, and consider that in the background of this, we have the Iran-Contra hearings at the very end. But we'll leave that
very end to give you the date. He still would have said communism. No one says communism in the whole movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I felt good about that.
Well, terrorism is something that we fight post the fall.
All right,
terrorism and environmentalism is something.
Yeah, although I'm not so sure about that. It seems like the 80s, I think that there was actually a lot of talk about terrorism from the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
Like, because I think at the time, I think they're trying to tie it together, that there was sort of the pet theory they're promoting was that basically that all terrorism everywhere was the fault of the Soviet Union, that they were promoting it all. There's a BBC documentary from many years ago called The Power of Nightmares that gets into this a little bit at the beginning. So,
well, and there's the Marine Corps base in Lebanon, right? That was what was it? Terrorism. The terrorism was on people's mind in the 80s.
Not from the lens that we say terrorism now. There was no.
That's true, but also that film came out in 2000, not
exactly
2000, but not 2002. Right, so terrorism was on
still
the minds of people, but it's pre 9/11.
Post 91 is what I'm saying. Post 91,
whatever, man.
G.I. Joe.
All right, man.
Everything is no longer the communism. It's the environment and terrorism.
Captain Planet.
The big bad's gone. Even Rambo. What is Rambo fighting? He's fighting.
Well,
Russians again, kind of.
He's fighting against the Soviets, of course, in Afghanistan, right? In support of the Mujahideen, soon to be the brave soldiers, Taliban. As was James Bond, Timothy Dalton, same thing. Great stuff. No irony there. But Rambo was also refighting Vietnam for us.
Yeah.
Oh, and 2.
This time we're gonna be allowed to win.
Right? What a scene.
I watched all those movies, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, you had cable.
Delta Force.
Yeah.
All 1 through 9.
Wait, Delta Force, that was canon, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You should have a Canon Films night, Ben.
I'd be cool with that. Some of the canon stuff was a little too hard to watch for me, but if we did, yeah, man, it's a little too low budget, little too obvious what they're ripping off there. But I enjoyed Life Force, and Jason and I have talked about.
Oh,
I would love to talk about that. That was great stuff.
Is it Ben? I'll ask Ben because I think he has a better internet thermometer than myself.
What's up?
Is Life Force cancelable?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So Night of the Comet instead. How about that?
That
was a good movie.
I'd do that.
Yeah. I own it on Blue Media for what it's worth. I'm not fucking around, man.
I mean, I actually will say, yeah, I would do Night of the Comet, but I would say it is interesting thinking about the point about communism that, like Bret Easton Ellis, his first book, which we established, I know Jason read, Less Than Zero, and then The Informers, just the short story collection, Rules of Attraction, and then American Psycho. All of those are at least about the 80s. I know American Psycho came out like 91 or something like that, but they're all at least about the 80s. But actually, I've got to say the Cold War doesn't really seem to be much of a presence in any of them, right? For whatever you want to make of that.
I think it speaks to the people that he's dealing with in the world that he's from and lives in as well. That's extremely apolitical and extremely self-absorbed. I mean, even Less Than Zero, the film, the people are pretty self-absorbed, but Andrew McCarthy's character in the movie is like the moral center. But when you read that book, there's just no one has any morals. It's just kind of gross.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a weird adaptation. Touré, did you read Less Than Zero? Okay,
nope.
So Less Than Zero is this classical novel about just kind of nihilism among like coke snorting rich kids, and I mean that's that's
coke snorting,
right?
sexually ambiguous rich kids, like that's
yeah, exactly right. That's the milieu, right? That he's writing about, and I think Ellis is definitely writing what he knows, but that's he definitely comes out of that, but it's it's like a really, like, I mean, the writing is really good. I like that book a lot, but it's I mean, it is just like a relentlessly bleak book, and the adaptation is kind of hilarious because like the adaptation, they're like tried to make it uplifting, so they have the characters like one character in particular spouting like AA rhetoric, and the rest of these people, and it could not be less like.
Yeah. I don't think anyone goes to rehab. I believe the book ends, and I don't care. This is no spoiler. It came out in like 87. If you ever read it now, I believe the book ends where the main drug dealer, played by James Spader, has a 12-year-old girl locked in his basement.
Yes, that's correct.
They're shooting heroin in, and they all take turns.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it is.
So, now the film came out after The Breakfast Club, so is that why everyone learned a lesson? This is The Breakfast Club at night. Is what they do.
Breakfast Club after dark.
Right. Dinner club. Cocaine dinner club.
Breakfast Club after dark.
There it is.
Yeah. So you were asking if Life Force was cancelable. You know what was cancelable when it came out was American Psycho. To put it mildly.
That's a nice segue.
Thank you. I'm very proud of it. But no, people were super pissed about this book, and it was supposed to be because it was perceived as being horrendously misogynistic, and it was and like there were like protests at like book events, stuff like that. It was really it was a big deal. In fact, I believe Christian Bale, I do not remember what the family relationship is, but like Gloria Steinem is like an in-law or something, and she tried to get him to like not do this movie because it was still such a big deal from that. Which always, I have to say, I mean, I'll put my cards on the table. I like Bret Easton Ellis. I might be fucking up my chances of getting him on one of our shows now, but I don't necessarily like him as a Twitter persona, but I like him as a novelist.
I watched a little bit of his podcast for a while, or his show, whatever he has, and I was like,
yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah. I did that too because I read a bunch of his novels and I liked them, and so I listened to the podcast for a minute and then decided it wasn't for me. But yeah, I mean, he's just one of those people. It's like, there are. It was kind of nice when there was a little bit more mystery, about who's putting, who's behind the book sometimes.
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, but I do think, Less Than Zero, Rules of Attraction. Although I do actually think for Rules of Attraction, I think that's the one where the movie is actually better than the book. Because it kind of takes the stuff that's good about the book and just that.
Did you know Rules of Attraction is supposed to be the sequel to Less Than Zero?
Yeah, it's kind of, well, there are a bunch of these things that are like it's all kind of a Bret Easton Ellis extended universe. So like there's so Patrick Bateman is supposed to be the older brother of Sean Bateman, who's a character in Rules of Attraction. He's the guy who's always saying rock and roll, deal with it. And there's also there's a line in here where it's like the woman who I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say it now. We're not going to worry about spoiling American Psycho. So the woman who he brings back the second time he has the prostitute over,
Christy.
The second time
Get it right.
Say her name.
He will answer to Christy. That's a wonderful Chardonnay you're not drinking. Now, Ben, going back to this Gloria Steinem thing that I've just learned of. So if Christian Bale had dropped out, I know that the original choice was Leonardo DiCaprio, and I just thought that would be horrible because you could hear him saying, "Oh, Christy, you're such an incredible prostitute." Sabrina, don't just
stare at it, eat it.
Stare at it, eat it.
Yes,
that wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have worked, especially not on the heels of Titanic. But I don't think it would have worked on its own, and that's no disrespect to Leonardo DiCaprio.
No,
but
it's just
Christian Bale nailed it. I thought he was fantastic in this film.
Absolutely, yeah.
Channeling the spirit of Tom Cruise, I believe. In one of
I read
Cruise
about
movies.
that. That was actually
that vacant look in his eyes.
That
was really, reading that, I thought was kind of funny, sad, and interesting. I rewatched it. I had to drop someone off at the airport this morning, so I rewatched it this morning, and I'm glad we picked this movie because I, like many people that watched it in the early 2000s, wanted a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the movie posters, and I didn't read the book. I didn't even know that Bret Easton Ellis had wrote it. And I just was like, this isn't
really. Is that what happened with you? I saw it. I didn't know anything about the film. I knew nothing about it. I happened to be watching Siskel and Ebert because I was that guy in 2000, right? And I was hooked by one of the scenes one of the clips that they showed in Siskel and Ebert was the business card scene.
Yes.
And I was all about it at that point because I thought, oh my God, it's just a critique of Reaganism. Mm-hmm. And I was 29 at that time and went to see it, I guess, in Meriden, Connecticut. I was in New Haven. And I was blown away. And I'll shut up there and come back to this. But I really felt good about film after I watched that because there was content to it, right? It wasn't just violence. There was, as I said before, a critique of Reaganism that ran all the way through it. And I was really impressed with that. And disappointed by how few people seem to get it in real time.
Well, yes and no, right? They do make a sequel. The sequel has nothing to do with.
Well, I didn't watch that sequel.
This is kind of funny, actually. So this is embarrassing, but I'll go ahead and admit it. I had watched the sequel before I watched American Psycho.
Mm-hmm. Word.
Yeah. So randomly, I think it was just one of those things that it was like at the video store.
Cable.
I have no idea how I decided to, to watch it, but whatever. Somehow or another, I ended up watching American Psycho 2, which is this like.
And it's Mila Kunis.
Yes, yes. Mila Kunis is.
You're a fan.
yeah, I liked her in that 70s show, so I thought I'd check it out and see what she could do as a serial killer. But yeah, it's this like pretty straightforward kind of dark comedy in like absolutely not the way that American Psycho is. And it's and it's like a fun movie. Like I think for what it is, if you just don't associate it at all with American Psycho, I think it's fine. Like I enjoyed watching it, but then I went back and watched number one, and then I just had what the fuck is this? I have no idea what I'm seeing. Like, this is before I'd read the book. This is before anything. I just had no context for what I was watching. I wasn't sure what to make of it. But then, like, years later, I'd read a few of his books, and definitely, I mean, to what Touré said, I mean, they have definitely all those books really are a critique of Reaganism. I mean, they're all like, because it's all, I mean, it's a very like narrow, very specific version of it, version of that critique. But it's like, he's looking around at those, coke snorting, sexually ambiguous rich kids, etc., like you're saying, right? And it all seems really empty to him. And that seems to tell him something about America in general. I mean, that's pretty much the perspective of all those books. And I will say specifically with American Psycho that, I think the backlash, I think, is kind of amazing to look back on because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm like, I don't think this observation gets me a lot of points as a film critic, but I mean, like, I Patrick Bateman's not a good guy. You're not supposed to think that what he does is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the perspective of the movie is not admiring of, Patrick Bateman and how he lives his life.
No, and I will confess, I had watched this film, and like I said, I saw it in the theater. I was probably like the oldest person in the theater, and again, I was 29 at that time. But anyway, I'd watched the film right around the same time I'd watched the movie Being There for the first time, which had come out in '79. So it's about 20 years earlier, and I'd seen Being There. I'd seen the trailer for Being There when I was at a film with my dad, with my parents. And I remember my dad was very excited about that film. So when I saw Being There was on TCM or something like that, I watched it and was transfixed, and that became instantly one of my favorite films, my favorite comedy. And so I went from that to American Psycho just coincidentally. And I always thought of, as a result of the content and the timing, American Psycho is basically being there with a psychopath rather than a mentally challenged man as your focal point, as the vehicle for the criticisms of Reaganism. Being There anticipates Reaganism, right? It comes out in '79, the short story by Jerzy Kosinski, who'd also done the screenplay. Likewise, anticipates Reaganism. It just come out a couple of years before the film. American Psycho is looking at Reaganism through its rearview mirror, and violently, with a different type of dark humor than what you're going to get from Being There, which is more cerebral than dark. But it really, I thought at that time, as we are concluding our Clinton years and unbeknownst to us are on our way to Bush too, it had a nice punctuation. And for me was a ray of hope, except as I said, and we'll come back to this, it struck me that in the movie theater, I seemed to be the only person who got it. I was the only one laughing at some very funny scenes because and my date was 25 and not originally from the United States. So I think she missed some of the cultural stuff, but good film.
Jesus Christ. The sex bots, Ben, that you were being attacked with are on another level of sex bot attack.
Yeah, I'm told that these sex bots are regulars at This Is Revolution.
The sex bots have been coming. I don't know why.
Okay.
Fair enough.
But I when you had made that comment, the last movie we did, Touré, before we decided we were going to do this, and you said it's a critique on Reaganism, and I think we had a private conversation where we talked about this movie as well. I really got excited to watch it because, again, I went into it thinking it was a horror movie.
Mm-hmm. And it is at the level of society.
It's a horror movie in the sense of I look at because you don't know, first of all, you don't know what the people do. And someone,
you mean mergers and acquisitions?
Well, remember, he's got a job where he's kind of an amorphous businessman.
Mm-hmm. And it's a rich man's son, right? I mean, because it's very clear that he has this, right? I mean, that's one of the nicest things about the business card scene, because you can see every last one of them is the vice president, and you get the sense, though they're all Ivy League educated, and for reasons that I won't say here, I thought of Gene when reflecting on this. I also, I mean, it is worth noting, I was in graduate school at Columbia at the time too, so there was another element to the Ivy League psychopath that really jumped out at me for reasons that I probably won't fully divulge here, but you can at least extrapolate. Proximity is what it comes down to. But anyway, my takeaway was that they were all rich, the children of rich men, who had all plugged into these jobs at vice president. Patrick Bateman's 27 years old. 27. And they're all contemporaries. So they
called him old 20s. Man.
Right. Right. Paul Allen seemed to be a little bit younger. That's another reason he had to go, I guess. But they were all, again, plugged into these jobs because of their class privilege. And more to the point, presumably nepotism. But I cut you off.
No, that's an interesting point. But I was going to say there's a few movies about this era. If you even think about Wall Street and what Gordon Gekko says about the company had 33 vice presidents, and I don't know what any of them did. So that's why we had to cut it. And then you look at a movie like Pretty Woman that I always talk about. The original screenplay was supposed to be about the Patrick Bateman, Gordon Gekko type characters who are all about mergers and acquisitions, because that's a new thing in the financialization of the Reagan years. So now you're crushing all these businesses and industry, especially in the middle of America. And these people are kind of psychopaths, if you think about it, because they just don't care about the true human cost of what they're doing. It just doesn't matter. They are oblivious to the world in which they live in. And I do find it interesting as well, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, that the main character, Patrick Bateman, has no problem lashing out to people that are of a lower class.
As well as business competitors and women, no matter what their class background.
But publicly, he has no problem lashing out to.
Yeah. Well, and keeping with your point, and keeping with your point, Jason, Risky Business, which is pretty early. I mean, I guess that's at the end of Reagan's first term or the beginning of his second. That is, I didn't get this at the time because it was like 12 or 13. And I viewed that film through the lens of a boy who had been in Catholic school for 8 years. It was 12 or 13 and a big Prince fan, but we'll leave that at that. But when I went back and watched the film as a young adult, I thought, holy shit, this is a critique of Reaganism once again. And it's a really, I think, a pretty brilliant critique of Reagan. The teenagers didn't get that, right? I mean, if you were a teenager at that time or a tween, then you wouldn't have picked up on what they were doing, which is The Graduate for the Reagan years. But so Paul Ryan, who is my age, I don't think he ever got that. I think Paul Ryan's the kind of dude who saw that film at 13, or however old we would have been when it came out, and said, "That's me," and lived the rest of his life in accordance with Joel, with the blueprint established by Joel from Risky Business. But it's really interesting, and I've said this to Jason privately, that there's for all intent and purpose, a remake of Risky Business that comes out in 2005 or 2006 called The Girl Next Door. And it's the same basic premise. I've long thought about doing an article on this, but it's the same premise, except the message is different. Like Risky Business is a critique of Reaganism because, going back to Jason's point, there is no social good. And there is a juxtaposition from the older generation of business people who embrace the Fordist consensus and the presumption of a public good beyond profit that the Gen Xers reject, right? Hence Joel's involvement in the sex trade as a pimp of sorts. The girl, so again, this is all bad according to that film, and it's really clear even with the sanitized conclusion. But when you get to The Girl Next Door and the Bush years, it's capitalism as a public good of generating profit through prostitution, and the public good is selling safe sex. So
that's right. Yeah.
And I have to correct myself. It wasn't prostitutes, but another category of sex workers, porn stars in that one. But the porn stars are being basically treated as property of a fun-loving pimp who's very different from Guido, the killer pimp or whatever, in Risky Business.
Yeah, I need to go back and rewatch Risky Business.
Great film.
Yeah, I saw it several years back, but I'm just realizing as you're talking, I actually shamefully I remember The Girl Next Door much better than I remember Risky Business.
How unfortunate. It was more recent, so that's the excuse.
Yeah, that's some defense, but so I do think it's interesting going to Jason's point about Bateman being willing to publicly lash out at people below him in the class structure, and then getting into the actual plot of the movie a little bit. So the first thing, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the first thing at the beginning of the movie you hear Christian Bale say it is in voiceover when he's describing his morning routine, which is intense. And but I believe the first thing you hear him say out loud to another character is chiding them for their casual anti-Semitism, which is something that hit me a little bit more this time through. That it's at least publicly, Bateman is a lib. He's the relatively enlightened one of the bunch. He says like he's pushing back against the anti-Semitism, and the guy's like, oh, I forgot, Bateman's girlfriend is in the ACLU.
It's the ACLU lawyer, yeah.
Nice code there, right?
Yeah, the anti-Semitism was pretty over the top.
Spinning the menorah.
Yeah. It's actually
a dreidel.
Which is nice too, because there's a little suggestion there that Bateman might actually be one of the least horrible people he works with.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be good in light of what he does over the course of the rest of the movie, or possibly doesn't do. We can get into that too.
And that juxtaposition between his public persona and what he does, which is real, behind the scenes, which is the unvarnished expression of their misanthropy and narcissism taken to its natural conclusion. That was, I thought, very nicely done. And again, evocative of Reagan.
Also, that first scene kind of sets up what becomes a problem for some people.
Well, in the very first scene, they're in a restaurant, aren't they? And they put out their credit cards and several $100s. But then
before it was $500 for the and then you have to keep in mind
in 1987
in the 80s, especially in upscale parts of New York and also LA, people were having $1,000 lunches. Like that was an actual thing that people did. And then it kind of gets mass produced by the time we get to the 90s. Wolfgang Puck gets a chain of restaurants. California Pizza Kitchen is no longer the place to be, right? But
yeah, I ate there in North Virginia. Whatever.
There was a time where there could be only one. But I also kind of dug the fact that there's the first thing they're naming all the people wrong.
Yeah, which is a pivotal plot point, right?
I think it's one of the more important parts of the movie because the movie and everything I read, I definitely went down a rabbit hole trying to read more about that. Did anyone have a definitive idea of an ending? Am I too dumb? Did I just not get it? And then reading everything from Easton Ellis to the woman that wrote it and her screenwriter, they all wrote it very open-ended because the book ends that way. So you really don't know what's real and what's not. And of course, Ben will get into that later, but I love that setup of we're all kind of generic rich dudes.
Yeah, I mean, it's both a running joke in the movie, and also, as Touré says, very important for the plot that like nobody can tell any of these people apart from each other.
That's the only way it works, right? I mean, that's the only way it works.
Oh, the business card scene, I think, really nails that home because I didn't get the difference.
No,
other than everyone misspelled acquisitions.
My God, it even has a watermark. I thought Bale's performance with that last card, but was it the Doofus's card? No, it was Paul Allen's card. I thought his performance was fantastic. He's literally shaking. His whole sense of self was devastated. And with each roll of the dice, it was gradually undermined because he thought that he had the indisputable best, most tasteful business card, and he could see that others had different taste, and it just messed him up. But there was no doubt that Paul Allen was the
symbol in
best.
academia, as you guys are handing out your business cards in academia. What is the status symbol?
Business cards.
Is it business cards you guys hand out? What is it?
I hand out business cards, but the university prints those up. I don't care.
Okay, so there's no status symbol you guys have when you're going to lunch and someone does the Patrick Bateman thing. What is the Patrick Bateman-esque thing in academia that you guys do?
I don't know, from chance encounters with people. I mean, Ben, what's your take on it?
I don't really think that, in my limited experience of academia, I don't actually think it is very Patrick Bateman-esque.
We don't make enough money. I mean, there's that.
You guys are all at the Togos.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know any professors who start out with start out the day with hours of like skincare and exercise. My impression is that
met Touré Reed.
Yeah, I was going to say I used to.
Okay, only one professor who starts out the day that way.
First thing in the morning. Well, and Jason, to your question, I think I told you this, but my first year or so, I was taken aback by some professors I knew understood themselves to be liberal, and their acceptance of the Bush administration's assessment of Iraq's contribution. So this is, I guess, my second year to the terrorist attacks on September 11th, right? And I was absolutely dismayed. I was dismayed for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being that where I teach, since this is not University of Chicago or Northwestern, keeping it same state, we teach students who are in the military. Right. And I had a student my first semester, really good brother. I'd like to. We're still Facebook friends. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I'm a big fan of his. And he got called up. I mean, he started late because he had sergeant school. The terrorist attacks occurred, right after he returned, and he got called up just a few weeks later. And to hear some of my professor acquaintances, is the term I'll go with, accept what they knew to be utter bullshit, but they saw this, it was very clear, as an elaborate chess game, and that the ends would justify the means. And I was really dismayed. And I called my father about this. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Because it gave me some insights as to why my father was so sour. And this was 20 years ago, just about, but was so sour on academia. And he said, the way to think about professors is that they're basically the boss's secretary. And so that's as close as we get to being Bateman. It's sucking up to Bateman. Because that's going to get you the grants that you want.
Oh,
but that was a devastating assessment, especially for a very young assistant professor, as I was at that time, who oddly went into the profession not as jaded as you would think Adolph Reed's son would be. But
yeah, fair. It's kind of funny because I guess I'm not 100% sure what you mean, although being just a little bit younger when I was still finishing up, college in, I guess like 2002, I would have been 22. I can remember being in a political science class, undergrad, where the professor was I think fairly liberal Democrat, and he just took it for granted that, of course, there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and I asked about it in class, like, how, but why, right? I mean, like, what's the like, what's the, is there evidence for this, whatever. And he was like, oh, well, intelligence, they must know all kinds of stuff they're not telling us.
Right. So. But, we want to be close to power, and it offers us some affirmation. Much like with the cable news people, right? It's a variation on the same theme. And the only way to maintain relationships that are close to power is to be their mouthpiece. As we see on the cable news, and our version of it's more elaborate, right? It's more complicated. It's not for lay people. It's oddly enough for the staffers of the cable news companies who read it and then, translate that or transfer it to the talking heads. But it's a variation on the same theme, and it's pretty horrifying. But it's not quite the same thing as showing your business card. I guess maybe being profiled in the New Yorker might be on the spectrum. Well, I was profiled in the New Yorker, and that was,
I guess I kind of know one academic like that, but I'm not going to start any shit by saying his name on air. So,
thank you. I don't want any associations, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But yeah, I think like ostentatious consumption is out of the reach of at least most academics. Just to,
so I mean, you don't have your version of this. So you guys don't all go to the In and Out.
Let's go to the Sonic.
How did he get reservations at Sonic on a Friday night?
How did he get reservations at the Red Lobster? It's Friday night.
The Cheddar Bay biscuits are divine.
So I should say, by the way, one thing, thinking about all the restaurants and their, all the little restaurant reviews that Bateman reads and, and passes on, a thing that is in the book, 1991, did not make it into the movie, or I think there might be I don't think it made it into the movie at all, actually. So it is in the book a few places, is that Patrick Bateman is a huge fan of Donald Trump. And
sense.
like it comes up several times over the course of the book how much he likes Trump. Just like, I mean, this is 1991.
Trump's also a Democrat at this point in time.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Trump is still a Democrat, but I mean, I guess Bateman just likes him as like a rich guy who's in the news a lot.
He's a really good rich. I mean, Touré was in the East Coast at this time when Trump was coming up. Trump was a great rich guy in the news. And another thing I thought about, speaking of rich guys in the news that were psychopaths, when this movie is coming out, and no one talks about this. Do you remember the Central Park rapist?
Yep.
Well, you mean the Central Park Five?
Right?
No, not the 5.
Oh, the Reyes, the actual rapist.
The yuppie. He had a name.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
It was
the
called
preppy.
The preppy.
Right. And I can't remember his name at the moment, but it was the rough sex trial. I was in high school at that time, as I recall it. Yeah. And he was an interesting character, since he was actually regular middle class person. His mother, if I remember correctly, was kind of starstruck. She was on the spectrum of the boss's secretary. I think she was the nanny or something for one of the Kennedys or something like that. And she had aspired for her son to be in that world. So I forget which New York day school he attended. It wasn't Dalton, but it was one of the big ones, as I recall it. And the young woman, I guess I can't remember. Was she home from college or something?
I think it was a home from college type party situation.
Yeah. And he attributed it to the murder was an accident. They were having rough sex. But yeah,
she attacked him.
Right. She had, since it was rough sex, she had gotten rough with him, and he, in the throes of self-defense and passion, I think, had murdered her. So
and he was, and remember, a videotape had surfaced of him. And that
next to Maury Povich.
Yeah. Obviously, as we love to tease Ben, for those of you that are new to this show, it's usually called Jason and Touré Make Fun of Ben. He didn't watch TV. His dad wouldn't let him watch anything but The Simpsons. Apparently, from 87 to 94, he couldn't do shit.
It's not a bad choice though.
No, that's
especially for those years.
As Ben was reading books and learning, I was watching way too much Current Affair and Inside Edition.
Yeah. In my defense, I also watched the X-Files.
All right, another good choice. You kept it Fox.
That's right.
Remember his dad would let him change the channel.
I went to an X-Files bar mitzvah in 1996.
Wait a second. I want to hear this.
Change it again. Ben was like, I just want to see what's on ABC.
Nothing good, right? I mean, Urkel. Urkel was probably the best thing.
If Urkel was on the house,
Boy Meets World.
Turn it right off. Ben don't know who Topanga is.
Nor did he know that she was apparently racist back then.
On the show?
There's a whole thing. I don't want to touch it, but there's a whole thing. I watched it. I didn't watch enough of that show for obvious reasons, or maybe it's obvious reasons. I was a young adult.
Club with Ben Savage and Matthew Lawrence.
Really? And Matthew Lawrence too? Ben Savage and Matthew Lawrence were friends, which that makes sense.
We were all at the same Spearmint Rhino, and I looked over, I was like, whoa, where the hell am I?
That is funny.
It is
funny. And Gary Coleman was working the door.
No, but you know who walked in, and everybody, all the dancers like flocked to this cat was Scott Baio.
Oh, that doesn't surprise.
Scott Baio came in with big cash.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ben, I still have my X-Files bar mitzvah t-shirt. I saved it. It's awesome, man.
That is such a what year was the X-Files?
1996. October
1996. There you go. That sounds right.
I bring it to class from time to time because I have a whole anecdote related to that I used to teach hegemony, which I won't share here. And my students don't believe me when I describe some of the details. I was like, nope, here's the t-shirt. And I was abducted at person X's X-Files bar mitzvah. There was a nice X-Files sculpture. Dancing girls. It was a scene, man.
Poor Ben. Poor Ben.
I had a good time. Yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah.
All the kids are talking about Full House at school.
I don't know, man. I have a to be completely honest, I actually think that the mid-90s, mid-90s, from what I could recall, I think the Simpsons was probably the thing people were most likely to to talk about.
Once Cosby was off the air, I was like, I'm done with you.
Yeah. Well, and the Simpsons were losing to Cosby for a minute when they were up against each other because there was a second.
It didn't last long.
No, I mean the Simpsons. I think, it was like Thursday night for a minute, and it went back to Sunday.
Yeah,
because they got clobbered. Cosby Show wasn't even good at that point. I mean, for what it was.
No, they did. Well, let's not. We will.
We already did that show on This Is Revolution.
I did
talk about that forever.
I do. Just funny. I'm trying to remember what year this would have been because I remember there was like one of the early Simpsons clip shows. There was a joke where Bart asked Homer why the Cosby Show went off the air. And Homer says, "Well, he wanted to end it, before the quality started to suffer." Oh. And Bart says, "Not me, man. If I had my own TV show, I would run that baby into the ground."
And who knew they would be so literal about that, too? Right? I mean, that was the greatest show on television for several years, and
then it kept going for another 100 years after that. Yeah.
And I was a diehard Simpsons fan, so I was committed to watching it even after I knew it sucked. But then eventually hit a point where I had to give up. So.
Ben, one of your commenters is hilarious. Fork somebody.
Fork.
He says Charles was in charge of the Spearmint Rhino. I was literally at the Spearmint Rhino in the valley.
Nice.
It's like that guy was there.
But was Willie Ames? No, he was not, because he was Bible Man at that time.
He was Bible Man. Willie Ames was definitely Bible Man. He was not there. He was not. We're not talking about that. Back to Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
Whose name is a play on Norman Bates. I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And he likes that game. right? So that's who was the inspiration for Norman Bates, right?
Ed Gein?
Yeah.
Yeah. From my understanding.
Yeah, I think the so this is random, but in Carrie, the movie version of Carrie, the high
Original?
school was like Bates High School, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I think it was. Yeah.
You mean which one, Mr. I only watched the remakes. Were you talking about the one from 73?
Yeah, I'm talking about the one from 73. As far as I know, that one I've only watched the I've only watched the original.
I won't watch the there's remake. Again, I won't watch Red Dawn. I refuse to watch the Karate Kid remake.
Yeah. What was it? Sissy Spacek? Was she Carrie? So she freaked me out. I couldn't watch that movie as a kid or as an adult.
Greatest American Hero was on there.
No, that's a redeeming quality. But Sissy Spacek, as a boy in Georgia, when that film came out, I couldn't watch that movie. She freaked me out, man. I'm not going to get into why, but I was a boy in Georgia at that time. So,
but
your hint.
Your chat is on fire today, Ben. These guys have me cracking the hell up.
Oh, they always are.
Some of these comments.
So, yeah, I think so the first person that Patrick Bateman kills, assuming he kills anybody, is a homeless guy who's just a complete impulse thing. Like he stops and talks to him.
Black homeless.
Yes, black homeless guy. Yep. And he thinks, and he almost, and I think like
forms empathy, right? I mean, for a hot second, he acts like he's invested in this, and it was the actor was Norman from The Wire, who was also on what's that show that used to have Kevin Spacey on Netflix?
House of Cards
show.
Yeah, House of Cards.
Yeah, House of Cards. He was the ribs guy.
Okay, yeah.
He passed away a few years ago too.
Did he die? Yeah. He was the black guy in everything.
Okay. I remember from those two things. Oh, three things. American Psycho.
Watch more movies and he will be in it every time.
Okay. I believe you. Yeah.
Colors.
Yeah.
He was in Colors too?
I made that up.
Okay. There are a lot of people in Colors though. So
I mean, if you watch it again, you'd be like, well, dude from Spook Who Sat by the Door, I watched Colors 100 times. I felt like, oh, that's the main guy from Spook Who Sat by the Door. I had to walk.
Gus from season 5 of The Wire was in Colors.
Yeah, I have watched Spook Who Sat by the Door. It's been a long time, but I think I watched that when it was first released onto DVD or whatever. I remember listening to although whatever credit I give for like Jason's always giving me shit about not watching more movies with black people. So whatever credit I get for that is going to immediately evaporate when I admit that the reason that it was on my radar in the first place is I heard an interview about it on NPR.
If we keep doing this, if we keep doing these shows, pretty soon when Jennifer asks Ben if he wants to see a movie big, it'll be like, but you think black people in it? Ryan Coogler directed it. Oh, okay, yes, good. Honey, you don't want to watch Creed 2 again? You should. Does something to my soul, honey. Does something to my soul.
Yeah, there you go.
So Bateman performs empathy for a second with.
Yeah, Bateman performs empathy for a second. I think it's an interesting question whether he actually, for a second, is considering actually giving the guy money or helping him in some way, or whether the whole thing is just an elaborate setup, to fuck with them. But at any rate, at best, the empathy lasts for about 10 seconds. And then he tells him he needs to get a job. And he says, I just realized I have everything in common with you.
And he tells him he has a bad attitude. That's the problem. What the problem is? You have a bad attitude.
Yeah, if he had a better attitude, his dad would get him a job as a vice president of his company.
Yeah, but and the jump off too when he asked him about being homeless, I think he asked him if he was an alcoholic or something like that too. Yeah. but he definitely said he had a bad attitude, and if he turned his attitude around, then he'd be all right. And that
the guy
so
goes,
Reagan.
"I lost my job." He doesn't even say I am. He goes, "I lost my job," and then he goes on his tirade.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'm like, damn, this is just the best portrayal of that attitude, because everything Easton Ellis writes is from the Penthouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's from the it's I'm a fly on the wall in the 1%er Penthouse, and this is how they think of you and everybody else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
you are not coming to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah,
I will take your vote, but we had a lot of bouncers there. I don't know. You out.
Maybe because I'm getting ready to do a show on homelessness, so I'm back into the research mode, and there is an attitude still to this day that it's not a societal problem, it's a you problem.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you have a mental illness, you have an addiction, but it's definitely a you problem. And we all know in the 80s, it was super, it's a you problem.
You can take that into the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his little dialogue, I felt like with the homeless character, I felt that was a really important scene in the movie to kind of really show the psychopathic nature once again of these people, of all the people that and Touré had said this in a conversation that I think we had personally, where you were like, look, every relationship these people have is transactional. Mm-hmm. So this man had no value.
Yep.
You're not labor I can use. What good are you to me? I can't even have you in my house because as a servant, because you're gross. Mm-hmm. So I need the world of you.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely true. Every relationship is transactional. I mean, even one of the funniest things that happens in the movie, much toward the end of the movie, is when he eventually succeeds, I guess. But when he, although you get the sense that it might not last, but when he's initially trying to break up with his fiance, and her reactions is not, "Oh my God, you don't love me," whatever. It's I don't think that would work. We have all the same friends.
Like, who says that? Relationships of convenience, I think, is another thing that is kind of missed on a lot of people, because who's really going to be in a situation where it's like, well, we should be together because it looks good for our public image. A lot of show business.
We did chat about that a couple of days ago.
but that scene also kind of I laughed really hard.
The Dorsia scene or scenes.
The scene with Reese Witherspoon, he's drawing the picture of the mutilated woman.
Yeah. So this is also like a big thing. Well, I guess I'll just skip ahead.
This is a non-linear conversation.
Yeah.
The movie, I wouldn't say the movie drags, but it's would you say it's a character study? So you kind of have to get to know the man.
You have to know the man. You get to know the man and the players, right? I mean, because as we talked about from the start, the fact that all the relationships are transactional, they're not really human relationships. They don't know each other. That's essential to understand how those are essential plot points. And so that takes a little while to build up. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Like, not just know each other. Like, I think we should let's spend 2 seconds talking about the whole not know each other. How can that be your boy, your coworker? You go to lunch and dinner with them all the time. You're going to these people's houses and you literally don't know who they are.
Because all you talk about is stuff, right? I mean, related film, but came out a little earlier. Ghost, remember that one? Mm-hmm. The Charles Stewart story. Anyway, see that you don't know Charles Stewart, Ben? You know Charles Stewart? Oh well, Jason will tell you who Charles Stewart is. But Ghost, one of the things my father hated about that film is that when Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze, I think he was in Whoopi's body at that point. When Whoopi / Patrick were trying to convince Demi Moore that this was Patrick, all the memories were things that they consumed. It wasn't like, girl, you know how ticklish you are about your belly button or anything like that. It wasn't anything unique about Demi Moore as a human being. It was, remember that vacation we took? Remember that sweater I bought? And it's very much the same thing, right? That in this film, though it's of course in American Psycho, in contrast to Ghost, that's actually one of the criticisms of this world, and that being that all the relationships are transactional and center on consumer tastes and shared consumer values. So if all of your conversations are about the stuff that you buy, from clothing to vacations to cars, etc., you don't know this person.
You just ruined Ghost for a lot of people. I just want
it's a shitty, fucked up movie, and you just
ruined
that out before
Ghost for a lot of people. I just want you to know.
Look up Patrick Stewart. Not Patrick. Charles Stewart. Patrick Stewart's someone else who I like just fine. But look up Charles Stewart, and you could appreciate why Ghost was it 1990.
But you feel me that you broke. That's like the romantic movie. There's people that still say ditto to their significant other.
I say ditto to everything. Whatever. It's a fine word. That movie's fucked up.
So bad
and racist. It's a racist ass movie.
Just because the only bad guy is Puerto Rican.
There are two people in the film of color. One is a magical Negro. Her name is Whoopi Goldberg. The other is the Puerto Rican murderer, who is the contract hitman, basically. He goes to hell, but the investment banker, the beautiful investment banker, white investment banker, Patrick Swayze or whatever, he gets to go to heaven because he didn't ruin people's lives. Willie Sanchez or whatever his name is, he killed Patrick Swayze. That's one person. I'm certain that Patrick Swayze ruined the lives of many, many people on that Commodore 64 or whatever that Apple II, whatever it was, DOS system, whatever the hell it was, 1990. So that movie was terrible and it was racist.
It's weird.
I said it.
It's weird to hear you talk about Whoopi Goldberg because what I just read, because it was I agreed for reasons I can't remember to review this book for Jacobin. I just read Meghan McCain's book that just came out.
Why did you ship that to McManus?
Yeah, that does seem much more like a Matt article.
Who wrote the book though?
It's so bad it's possible that it's her.
I saw her when I used to watch the Bill Maher show, whatever that's called, on HBO. And I saw her, Real Talk. I saw her with Paul Begala, and Paul Begala had said something about, I don't know, Reagan or whatever, and she responded, and basically when he corrected her, then she came at him and said, well, I wasn't even born then. As if that was supposed to pull the pin on it. And Paul Begala said, this is the only thing that I've ever heard Paul Begala say that I appreciate. He said, well, I wasn't alive at the time of the French Revolution, but I know it happened. And she was so bad that I thought, I guffawed. I was like, did she even go to college? And I looked her up, and she went to Columbia and was an art history major, which is a very challenging major. But I missed her. So I appreciated that, but damn, there's something Bateman-like. There's something Reese Witherspoon-like about Meghan McCain and that kind of
every character in the movie is outside of the the laundry people and the homeless man and the sex worker.
Oh man, the laundry.
I feel like every player in the movie is kind of a despicable person. You could have called the movie American Psychos, plural, and I think it would have been, a perfect title. Because also too, the fooling Bale with the knife on the cover, you're kind of waiting for the slasher movie, and when you don't get the slasher, a lot of people didn't like the film at first.
Yeah, but I think
you never bought an album, Touré, you thought it was going to be dope, and you're like, oh man, this isn't what I wanted it to be.
It's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Meghan McCain is like one of the other vice presidents at the company who's like a little dumber than Patrick Bateman, like one of the ones who thinks that you spin a menorah. That would be Meghan McCain. And it is actually amazing how bad she was at being on television. That's all she did, and she just never got good at it. Like that interaction that you just mentioned. I mean, like she just because she didn't have to be, right? She could just keep getting on anyway. But Jason mentioned the laundry, and so I will try to get back to the plot. So after he kills the homeless guy, and I will say, is kind of funny given all the horrible shit that happens on screen in this movie. That kicking the dog, who he doesn't even kill, he just kicks the dog
till he dies.
What's that?
He kicks a dog till he dies.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that, but yeah.
Dog out.
But kicking the dog,
a little dog though,
was off screen because that would be too upsetting to show.
Yeah, unlike all that other
violence is off screen. Most of the violence in the movie is off screen.
A
Yeah.
lot of it's implied, but you get the setup, and eventually some of it is much more. I mean, the Paul Allen death I thought was very, very tastefully done. In the context of
that's the one thing I dug about when I first saw it. I was like, this is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stop laughing at the Huey Lewis thing.
That was brilliant. And when Huey Lewis makes his comeback with Willem Dafoe, that was also brilliant. But I'll shut up because it's not.
Yeah. So it's I will say that as if you read the book, that you get lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff about Huey Lewis and Whitney Houston and etc. All Patrick Bateman's musical tastes, but yeah, so then before, so you have, I think at this point, seen him kill the homeless guy in the street, but before you see him killing anybody in an environment that would involve sheets, you see him taking blood-stained sheets to the laundromat, and
it's implied that he killed a woman, probably from his class tier or close to it, who he crossed paths with in the walkway.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And it is like this scene at the laundromat is one of several that along the same lines, which are okay. So there is all this ambiguity about whether he even kills anybody at all, how much of this stuff is real, but also it's very like another kind of running joke in the movie is that people like Patrick Bateman are so far above the rules that apply to ordinary people that they could he could call his lawyer and confess in detail and it doesn't matter. Right? It's like, oh, good joke. He could bring blood-soaked sheets to the laundromat and be like, oh, okay, whatever. He's got some blood-soaked sheets.
And it's like, how we use the term like Karen to talk about someone who's yelling about the manager. That's basically what he's doing about blood-soaked sheets, which again brought me back to the whole psychopathic nature of the people in the movie. That he's not concerned about hiding the fact that he has blood-soaked sheets. He's concerned. He's like, I need these cleaned by a certain date. These come from New Mexico,
where the best sheets come from.
Which I was like, what? I didn't know that.
Who knew?
New Mexico, particularly known for its sheets. Yeah, all right.
But they're young, wealthy, and attractive. And again, I mean, Reagan wasn't young, obviously, but the fact that there is this pretty package that basically masks, and in fact in his opening scene of the regiment he talks about this mask that he has as he pulls off. But anyway, the fact that they're attractive and wealthy masks this evil within them, and I would describe that as a lack of empathy and really true misanthropy for others.
Right. So I think, is Paul Allen the next person he kills?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that feels right. After the crime of the murder of opportunism.
Mm-hmm. And Paul Allen, he basically kills because he was able to get a reservation at Dorsia.
Well, that and the card. There was a business card, and Dorsia put it over the top. But the business card was it.
Oh, you mean when they laughed at him when he tried to get the reservation?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which happens a couple times in the movie. That he tries to get a reservation, and they're like, "Are you out of your mind? You cannot get a reservation this quickly." But But yeah,
Alan also talked shit about Bateman, not realizing that Bateman was Bateman because Alan has mistaken me for this dickhead. What was his name? The dickhead, do you remember? Marcus Halberstram.
That's right.
Which is a fun name to say when you speak from your bottom lip.
He kept calling him
Marcus Halberstram.
And I guess they went to school together or something, or they worked in the same department.
They worked in the same department.
Yeah, I said Marcus has the exact same job as him.
And they have similar haircut. They even go to the same stylist, only Bateman has a slightly better hairstyle.
Oh, there's also a scene that
and Oliver Peoples glasses.
The Oliver Peoples glasses, everyone
in the same suits. Yeah.
Did you peep that everybody wears the Oliver Peoples glasses? It took me a while to peep that. I was like, oh, everybody wears the same glasses.
They were all the rage back then.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the business cards earlier, but just to put a
I think they were though, seriously.
You know, like just to kind of circle and underline the thing about the business cards. I mean, okay, look, I have no idea what makes any of the business cards better or worse than any of the other ones. Like I could not tell you, but I can at least tell like the difference between the first two. That like the second one looks different, but then the Halberstram business card that like puts him into this like, just
the Paul Allen one. The Paul Allen.
The Paul Allen one, which makes him just like delirious with outrage that that it's so good, is like just completely like plain. Like that's something that you could like.
It was kind of like Bateman's. It was the one that was closest, I think, to Bateman's aesthetically, because a lot of the other ones were more textured, as I recall it. And Bateman's was very subtle, and that's what he was going for.
Oh yeah.
He didn't want to be flashy. Didn't want to seem too black, let's say, which would come up later.
Like another thing about a lot of the things these people are doing, I don't. It's so elite. And New York was like the elite capital at this point in the 80s. It's still coming off being a broke ass city. It's one of the most violent cities in America, but it also has this little enclave of the 1%. This is bone. As Touré, Pascal would be probably a pretty interesting person to talk about this with, as he grew up in New York, but I know Touré grew up on the East Coast as well,
from the metro area of New York.
But that enclave of kind of hedonistic opulence that that Easton Ellis loves to critique, you're really getting an inside look on something that might be hard for a lot of people to understand, because again, by the time we get to the 90s, we're mass producing this idea of really high-end status that is a little more obtainable for the middle class at this point.
Everybody gets to be nouveau riche, thanks in part to easy credit, right? Exactly. And even eventually the wealthy people will be much less subtle and start to present themselves as if they're the nouveau riche. What's his name? Elon Musk. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I definitely am picking up what you're putting down on that one, Jason.
Yeah, that was fascinating to me about the movie. That was really, considering also, let's also keep in mind that this screenplay is written in like 95.
It was that long ago.
Oh, it takes a while to pitch it.
Yeah. So, but while listening to Huey Lewis, we get the Paul Allen exchange.
Yes, Ben, please go into the Paul Allen exchange. That is actually the
that lovely raincoat.
The whole movie. You wearing a raincoat?
Yeah. It's Paul Allen.
I am.
Alan is just completely out of it by this point, so he'll just kind of listen to the stuff about, about Huey Lewis. He doesn't even really, he's like, oh, you're wearing a raincoat? That's weird. All right. And then he comes out and gleefully kills him.
With a beautiful axe, though. It was a spotless axe. And the style section, as Jason just alluded to, was taped all over the floor under the chair that would be where Alan would meet his end, with an axe through his head. Jared Leto, if you haven't seen the film.
Who would play the Joker?
To Batman great effect here.
I didn't watch. Ben, was his Joker bad? Ben will give you an honest take. Was his Joker bad?
Oh, like the Joker. That's what you're talking about, that movie.
No. Jared was the Joker in Suicide Squad.
Oh, I never saw Suicide Squad.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Honestly,
Will
I don't.
Smith was in it?
I've yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've randomly seen a few of them, but I don't watch most of the DC movies. Like none of them, like I don't know. They seem like they're mostly pretty bad.
I haven't seen it. I can't do it. But I wanted to see Leto's Joker because I figured he should be able to play that role pretty well.
Yeah.
He's not a bad actor. I mean, I've enjoyed him in what I've seen.
In movies where he gets fucked up, he's pretty good. This one, Fight Club, like
yeah,
he's getting fucked up. Was it Requiem for a Dream?
What is it? Panic Room? He was in that. He got fucked up in Panic Room.
Yoakum.
Yeah, he was like a wigger or something in that. He had braids. It was weird to see Jared Leto.
Do you think
he was like a rich boy wigger?
But do you think that was his idea? Like, do you think as they're giving him the character and he's like going to read for it, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go in, braid my hair. I got it.
Yeah.
I like when you do that kind of thing, Jason, with your best Stephen Root. That's my preference.
Good stuff. What Requiem for a Dream come out? It's like 99 or 2000 or something.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, because I remember I was living in Pittsburgh, and this is like one of these like slightly pre-internet as we know it things, because like I definitely went into that movie knowing absolutely nothing about it. Like I just I don't know, the poster looked cool to me or something, and so I went in and watched Requiem for the Dream in the theater, and yeah, that was like I think that's like I think that was probably more like, God damn it, I need a shower now than I've ever felt after watching a movie.
That movie was a hard watch.
Yeah.
But
so he's dead. with a beautiful axe.
Yeah, Jared Leto is dead now. And he's the one who he takes out his body in the nice bag. So he's literally dragging the bag across the floor of the lobby.
He runs into Lewis Carruthers, and he puts in the back of the cab and runs into. I think,
and nobody's like, "What's that giant, suspiciously body-sized bag that you're dragging around?" Which, in fact, I think we established has blood coming out of it on the floor.
It does. Yep.
Nobody raises an eyebrow at that. The only question is like, "Ooh, that's a nice bag. What's that?"
Yeah.
Like, does that speak more to New York in that era, or kind of back to the I don't care nature of these people, where it's just constantly trying to find the status symbol that someone has that they don't have?
Option 2. I mean, that's my story. That's what I'm sticking with, option 2, because that's all part of the plot point, right? I mean, that's another example of this pivotal plot point. But I love when Willem Dafoe, the private investigator, interviews Bateman. That's like one of my favorite scenes of any film ever, specifically Bateman's line. But I'll turn the virtual mic back to you, Ben.
Yeah, no, it is funny too. I think the three very different roles I associate William Dafoe with are this being the villain in one of the Spider-Man movies, and his character in Antichrist. When
I watched that movie the first time, oh God, I was living with the family, and the son had left, and he had this huge projector on a 106-inch screen, and we were watching Antichrist. If you've seen Antichrist, Willem Dafoe, well, it's not Willem Dafoe's Bing Bong, but it's supposed to be his Bing Bong, his Bing Bong and his Flabby Happy Baby is just on this huge screen in slow motion with classical music playing, and that's all I remember. We turn it on like, what is this? Just the whole room, like one side of the wall is just HD, dude.
Oh, damn. At least it wasn't 4K. Look at those Velas hairs.
We had surround sound in the room and shit. It was just like, oh my God.
He needs to to put some retinoid on that to pour it.
Like we all jumped at the end scene of Antichrist where she's like, "Oh."
Well, now we skipped before we get to Willem Dafoe, the private investigator. There is the scene where Bateman tries to cover his tracks, and he goes back to Alan's place. And as he arrives at Alan's place, he's suddenly overcome with panic. And you're like, well, why is he panicked? Like, what's the problem?
Because it's so much better.
Because he realizes that Alan's place overlooks the park and is probably more expensive than mine. And then he descends to to cover his tracks by putting together a bag because it's now time for Paul to take a vacation or take a trip or whatever. And then he goes, this is the part that fucked me up when I watched it. So he goes to the answering machine, which a lot of people didn't have in 1987, as I recall it. But he goes to the tape answering machine, and he leaves a message, a new outgoing greeting, indicating that he's had to take a trip, maybe to go to Paris or something like that, but to take it to London. And then he says to Meredith, I'll call you or whatever when I get back. And he says, hasta la vista, baby. But anyway, and I remember watching this in the theater at the time thinking, well, that's not going to work. Like, what the fuck is this? It's a shitty way to cover your tracks, right? They sound similar, but they're not identical, but that's that plot point again.
Yeah. Nobody can tell the difference between them visually. Nobody can tell the difference between their voices, because at no point later does anybody question that he left that message.
And then that gets us to Willem Dafoe interviewing him.
Yeah. So Bateman, so Jean, the secretary who'll come in later, the one who I guess is in Adolf Reed's analogy apparently is like us as academics.
Yes. Yes. And she lived to tell about it too, just like most of us so far.
Fair enough. But Jean comes in and she says, "Oh, there's this detective here who wants to see you." And he's like, "Oh, say I'm at lunch." And she says, it's 10:30 in the morning. He's like, "Oh, okay, well, send him in." And and then he pretends to be on the phone giving like fashion advice or something. I don't
about bold striped suits and what to do's and don'ts. If you're wearing a shirt with bold stripes, the tie has to be subtle. You can't wear a bold striped shirt with a bold side suit. It's the whole thing. And then he describes this as business advice.
Right. Which is hilarious. If you're going to fake a call in an industry, isn't it easy just to use the jargon of your industry?
Rich man's son, though. And he's got a 13-inch TV in his office, too.
I think the joke is that it's, even though there are a few references to accounts, somebody managed to land an account, and even though he's got that line where he says he and Halberstrom have the exact same job, doesn't really seem like any of them do anything. Like they go to dinner, like that's they go out for drinks.
Yeah. It's like watching a reality show. Like it's like go to dinner and
you tease this, or you roll back the Wayback Machine back to their days at Harvard or Yale or whatever, and Alan went to St. Paul and then Yale, which we're going to come back to because that's really important. But you go to those institutions and you basically get a B for showing up, right? So presumably, if you just puke up words on a page, then and turn it in kind of close to the due date, then the odds are better than not that you'll end up getting a B. So because everyone at those institutions, generally speaking, understands that these are smart kids, right? That's the assumption. And it's no coincidence that they tend to be affluent, and often enough the children of powerful people like, I don't know, U.S. senators from Arizona or whatever. And of course, while no one's nudging you directly, give this U.S. senator's kid a passing grade, the incentive structures at those institutions really militate against giving people low grades because they'll complain. And you have articles to write or books to write, and graduate students that you have to reproduce your intellectual DNA, basically. And undergraduates are a nuisance, and they're all smart because they got in. So that only in real life reinforces this kind of narcissism and psychopathy maybe, I mean, a presumption that they are better than the rest of us, practically, because the world is their oyster and they know it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, you could be, George W. Bush, who I remember the only two schools he applied for were Yale and I think one of the UT schools. That was like, I don't even think it was like one of the better UT schools. It was just like that was the backup he was pretty sure he could get into. But like, he was gonna, he was gonna get into Yale because his family went to Yale and he's,
legacy,
like all that stuff, right?
If only you think he majored in dodging shoes, though, because that dude, like, he is the greatest shoe dodging president.
No, I think whatever else you want to say about George W. Bush, it's like the person in the chat earlier said you have to separate Patrick Bateman from the man from Patrick Bateman, the music critic. Whatever else you want to say about George W. Bush. That man had some reflexes. I mean, like the way that he got out of the way that quickly, like in the shoe kid.
And as I always say, the best part is that he came back up to the podium waiting for the other shoe. Right? I mean, he knew the dude had 2 feet and 2 shoes, so he dodged the one and then came back ready. And I'm confident that this was like a frat boy Deke House flashback from like 1968 or whatever the fuck it was at Yale.
Well, I think we talked about this on a previous one. But,
I know we did.
But I will say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember us talking about this. But but by far the best cinematic portrayal of George W. Bush was Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay.
Yep. Mitsubishi Wa.
Definitely captured.
That felt real to me, man. I mean, if only that guy were a little taller, because W is tall, right? The guy who played W is not tall. If that dude were taller, he could have been Bush's double.
It's
food
so
taster,
funny.
all that stuff, right? He was
isn't
spot
it
on.
Crazy as we're how many years past that dude's presidency? Almost 20. That's like dude, president for 2 terms.
Yeah, those were simpler times, though.
Yeah. So
Willem Dafoe.
so William Dafoe is interviewing him. Bateman is extremely weird and evasive about it. He has no good answers to anything.
Better than that, though, he uses the past tense to describe him. Willem Dafoe asked him about Paul Allen, and he says, "Well, he says, what can you tell me?" He says, "And someone, how many?"
Oh, he was part of that whole Yale thing.
Yeah, somebody said, "How many times have you seen this, Touré?" A bunch. And back when I was in grad school and needed to escape, I actually took notes on facets of it. He says, "So I'm at a loss, actually. Paul was part of that whole Yale thing." And Willem Dafoe says, "Yale thing? What do you mean?" He says, "Yeah, Yale thing." "So what do you mean Yale thing?" "Well, for one, Paul was probably a closeted homosexual who did a lot of cocaine. That Yale thing." I'm the only person in the theater who is like literally rolling in the aisles. And what matters is not when the film came out, but where I saw it. And as I said, I saw it in the suburbs of New Haven, Connecticut in the 80s. And I would have been in high school when this movie was set. Yale had a reputation. The line about Yale, the derisive line about Yale, was that it was the cokehead Ivy and it was the gay Ivy, whatever that meant. Right. So the fact that this is 1987 and Bateman says Paul was part of that whole Yale thing and then describes what that meant, was hysterical, especially if you're from New Haven. And I guess of a certain age, because my date, who was 25, didn't know it. But again, she was originally from Puerto Rico. So this was some of that was lost on her. And the other people in their early 20s who were there, I guess they missed that moment. What a difference just a few years could make. But it was fucking hysterical. But using the past tense twice in describing it was really
and the detective doesn't bring it up. It just goes right by him, that which I guess is of a piece with everything else. The blood-soaked sheets, the dragging the body bag across the floor in front of people, the detailed confession to his lawyer. But anyway, so he runs off at the end of the meeting to meet his friend Bill Cosby, and then
Cliff Huxtable.
Cliff Huxtable.
Doctor. He literally said Dr. Cliff Huxtable.
I don't think he said doctor. He said
I didn't catch the doctor, but I did hear
said Cliff Huxtable.
I believe he said Dr. Cliff Huxtable because
I think you're projecting.
You mammy.
Yeah, but I did. So shortly after this, it's pretty soon after this, right? That he picks up. He picks up Christy, and then like places an order over the phone for Sabrina.
Mm-hmm. So the streetwalker was Christy, and the call girl was Sabrina.
So, yeah.
Did you feel like it was implied that he was a bad guy to get in a car with? She was like, "I'm not supposed to get in a car with you."
Well, she wasn't supposed to get in a car
with anybody. I think was the idea.
That was the issue.
I mean, that's not how hookers work. But I got some bad news for you guys. In New York, that's the opposite of how it works.
I don't know anything.
Well, actually, no. Was it that she wasn't supposed to get in a car? She wasn't supposed to.
Go back. She wasn't supposed to go back to his place.
So could have done it in the car
because he wanted to take her back to his place, and she said, "I'm not supposed to."
That's right. Yep.
Did you feel that was implied that he was a dude that people disappear from?
No, because he managed, of course, to reel her in, with money. But once again, it was one of those things. I think much like the model later on, who thought, well, whatever. We'll come back to the model later on that found him disarming. That there was something sweet about him in terms of his presentation, because people just saw this attractive man, right, with a lot of money. So that's what I think was going on.
Well, here's me looking too deep into it as I'm
slightly dweeby, attractive man with a lot of money, but yeah.
But when she says that either don't get in the car, don't go back to your place, women on the street talk because no one's going to protect them except for them. Right? Yeah. So it's that whole, well, I know who you are. Only she's going to know who he is as a bad guy killing sex workers. Only she's going to know that, right? Whether or not she gets in the car,
right?
And like, oh, I'm not supposed to get in the car with you.
And that second time, she wasn't supposed to get in the car with him. Like, she didn't want to deal with him. But the first time, she just wasn't supposed to go back to his place. That's what it was.
That's why I kind of feel like, oh, does she know that he's a bad dude? Is this one of those things that also is implying that you don't think so?
No, not at that point. Not at that point. I think it's interesting, though, just in keeping with his misogyny, which is bound up with his overall misanthropy, obviously, that he assigned names to them. They called her Christy, the other one, and you will answer to Sabrina. So they were just clearly, and in fact, when they videotape their antics, and the women aren't quite sure what to make with it, particularly Christy. She seemed to find elements of it amusing, but then not, obviously. But these are just props. These aren't people to him. They're not women.
Ben, you got to highlight the Dig Pins comment because Touré, I got you.
Okay, what happened?
So Dig Pen says, pretty sure in the book at least he had already hired and heard her once before. I do not remember that. It's been a few years since I read the book.
He picks her up twice. So
the first time you see her, she's very apprehensive in a way that makes you feel like, and I'm probably giving away too much of my former life, that makes you feel like that maybe
drive time, Jason's revenge. Afro.
Looking a little light there. but
you killed it, my main man.
He was my main man.
I loved it him.
I got the feeling
Hollywood Shuffle.
And now the sex
great man.
I had the feeling that she was apprehensive because she played that role really well. The whole time she's with him, she's real, and this guy also goes into the psychopathic nature of the people, the transactional relationship in which they live, and the class relationship in which people have in this movie, where these people are literally bloodsuckers. Like, I'm gonna literally kill you. I care not about you.
But the first time, and I think this works better anyway because there are 2 encounters with Christy. First time, clean slate. He's just some pretty rich man. No, I mean, I've watched this movie 950 times.
You got to pull the clip up.
Don't forget, I mean, he takes her back to the crib, and it was specifically to the crib that she was not supposed to go. He provides her this wonderful Chardonnay and has her bathe herself, right? And she's not freaked out at all by that stuff. I mean, it just is what it is. It gets freaky later, obviously.
She's
and
freaked
then there's the problem.
When she gets in, I'm talking about the first encounter. She's freaked out. And when he's like, oh, here's, clean your vagina out. She's not necessarily freaked out, but she has a look
weird.
She has a look that this is uncomfortable and I don't know what's coming next. Because also we have to keep in mind.
It's uncomfortable because she's stuffed, though, not because he's beat her already. It's uncomfortable because, again, to make sense of the second encounter, this has to be a clean slate, right? Because that second encounter, that's when she's like, you hurt me. I should get a lawyer. I was told, blah, blah, blah. But the first one's a clean slate.
We need bread.
Yeah,
we don't, because it's the screenplay, right? We're talking about the screenplay, not the novel.
I know, but Brett was there. He actually watched this movie. I think he actually dug it.
Well,
it's a great film.
I don't remember this. I've read the novel once. I've watched this movie maybe 5 or 10 times over the years, so I remember about 1% as well as Touré does. But I have, even though the most recent time was last night, so I can't be sure.
It's subtle, and it's one of those things that it's not going to jump out at you, and it jumped out at me because I was like, oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a creepy vibe to it. Whether that's because she knows anything about him is less clear to me. I think it might be a clean slate the first time, but and also I guess the thing worth mentioning here about this is that he's watching himself. He's watching himself in the act, and is very much more focused on himself than anything else that's going on.
Well, and he's directing them to look into the camera on and off, and there's a flash in the case of Christy of delight for a second, right? I mean, there's just like she's still not quite sure what to make of this whole thing, and is kind of amused by it. It seems for a second, but still finds it creepy. I mean, she did a brilliant job. The actress
was great. Actually, the woman that played Christy, I think, did a great job of saying a lot with her eyes.
Yeah.
So next person I think that he almost kills is Lewis, who he doesn't for interested reasons. So
I'll say that was hysterical.
Lewis, Lewis has a business card of his own now that he's showing off, and Bateman is found to be irritated before this, but now it's like, okay, you're done, right? So he goes into the bathroom, he's like put on his gloves, and he like reaches out to strangle him. Lewis thinks that he's coming on to him, and he's into it. And that freaks out Bateman so much that he just leaves and doesn't kill him.
And oh my god! And he washes his hands in the sink with the glove still on. But the look on Christian Bale's face, right, when he's performing his horror as how this is unexpectedly turned from him, was really a testament to his talent as an actor. I thought it was really well done.
Well, he's also supposed to be like a huge homophobe
well, that's clearly part of what's going on, and that is why he went at Paul Allen the way that he did too. Right, 1987, describing someone asked, and I remarked on this myself, what it would have meant to be the gay Ivy. It is a bizarre framework. It's not something that makes a lot of sense in this moment, partly because most of us understand homophobia to be a bad thing. In 1987, not so much. And as I recall it, and I was in high school, but on that campus a lot. My dad was a professor there. Yale was supposedly one of the more liberal Ivies, if not the most liberal Ivy, though I think it would be a toss-up between Yale and Brown. And so at least one element of Yale being the gay Ivy was that it was, again, the site of more progressive Ivy Leaguers than, let's say, Dartmouth, which would have been at the other end of the spectrum.
So next person he almost kills is Gene.
Yeah,
I think so. So he asks Gene out on a date, and I think this is the second time he calls Dorsia and tries to make a reservation, although this time he just pretends like they've that he's succeeded. And
the name.
Oh, they know me. They know me. I don't need a name.
Is she the moral center of the movie in your guys' opinion?
Jean? She's the one decent human being who's on the periphery. She's the boss's secretary. But she's a decent human being who's on the periphery of their world. And her decency, I think, is owed to the fact that she's close, but isn't part of it. So she's
and she clearly she clearly likes the idea of being part of it, like, even though she's very even though she's got a certain shyness to her, and like you get the sense she's probably from the Midwest somewhere, like she still has like when he's like what restaurant do you want to go to? We'll go wherever. And she's like, oh, wherever. Dorsia, right? I mean, like she knows, right? Like she knows what's aspirational, and she leaps at it.
I'd always kind of wondered about her, and I think Ben's assessment's probably right, but there is also this phenomenon of rich people hooking up their gap year back before people called it that, but their gap year kids with cool jobs through family connections. And I wondered if Jean might have been that person.
Oh, that's possible. That's true. Yeah.
Which is why she dresses more powerful than he would like.
She's got those padded shoulders.
No, that could be. That could be. I think I was just assuming that she doesn't see. She just seems very unconfident. But so she, and also just the fact that she's so into Patrick Bateman, who like, why, right? I mean, like, what's the
he's Batman.
Well, he's just so.
I mean, eventually, anyway.
Like he talks to her like she doesn't even have a soul.
Well, the fact that he instructs her on appropriate attire was really striking. And again, I mean, I think that's something that makes sense for 1987, but even in 2000 would have been jarring to see at that time, and certainly is that much more jarring now. But he tells her to wear a skirt, or a dress, and heels. I like heels. Says it to his secretary.
When he was like, "You're prettier than that."
Like, yeah, you're prettier than that. Like, yeah, it's absolutely brutal because like she's like being like very mildly flirty before that. She's like, "Oh, you look nice today, Patrick." He's like, "You should wear that." Like that's his immediate response to that line, and leading up to "you're prettier than that." But yeah, so she's back in his apartment. He obviously has no, there's no reservation at Dorsia, right? I mean, the plan's got to be to kill her at the apartment. And he goes as far as to, I think he's like gets mad at her for not putting the drink in a coaster or something. I don't remember exactly, but he goes as far as to take out a nail gun and to hold it.
A beautiful nail gun, pristine. It's clear. It's like the Sharper Image nail gun that he paid 4 times more than he should have, but it's awesome. Everything he has is awesome.
Is Ben, do you know Sharper Image, the store?
Yeah, I mean, I know what it is. Sure.
I had a girlfriend who bought me something from Sharper, and she was actually sort of part of the black version of this world. It was horrendous. Like, so why would you buy me something from Sharper Image, woman? Like, what's going on here? Do you know me? No. I was Paul Allen as far as she was concerned.
Sharper Image in Corte Madera, California had a stormtrooper in it, a life-size stormtrooper. And and I thought it was the coolest store in the world.
How many thousands of dollars was it?
Didn't matter. It was a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
I was going to save all the lunch money. Who wouldn't want a stormtrooper in their freaking room?
So Bateman's fiance calls him and she leaves this like long voice, not voicemail, answer machine message. We're in 1987. So she leaves this long answer machine message while they both sit there and listen to it. And it's pretty brutal again for Gene because Patrick has just denied like 30 seconds before being in a serious relationship, and the answer machine message makes it very clear that he is. But Gene,
what does that mean if you're Patrick Bateman, though?
Yeah, sure. Whatever. But like it's clearly something that any normal person would take as meaning that. And interestingly enough, Gene would still be down if Patrick told her to stay. Like she makes that very clear that that she's like, okay, whatever. I don't care what I just heard. Like I'll still do this. Do you want me to go? But for whatever reason, he says, I don't know, maybe he just like can't summon up the energy to like pretend to be into her to make her stay. Or maybe he feels something in some moment here that, but like for whatever reason, he decides instead of killing her, he tells her to leave.
I asked that question because she seems to be the only person that has some sort of morality that he respects, which is weird because he doesn't respect anybody, especially someone in a lower class tier than him. It's definitely like, well, you don't really exist. But for some reason, this woman to him exists. So Touré's whole point about the gap year, like, is she someone from the class tier that is doing this job for a little bit that he's like, oh, well, she's actually a decent person.
I thought that until we get to what he does with Evelyn What's-Her-Face when he's hanging with Christy the second time, who is Evelyn What's-Her-Face. I don't remember her last name, but she's from the same class tier as him, and we know how that ends.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so I do want to say before we get to that, so there is one important thing that happens in between these scenes, which is that he has the second, the second meeting with William Dafoe, and William Dafoe says, no, it's cool. Paul Allen has been spotted in London, so he's clear, he's not dead. Because again, nobody
and Bateman
can tell.
had an alibi, right? I mean, because he was
yes, and Bateman has
people.
Yes, and Bateman has an alibi that, in fact, when we know or think we know, that Bateman was killing Paul Allen, there were witnesses who reported him being at this dinner, and both assuming that Bateman did kill Paul Allen. Both of these things are very funny because they just go to how nobody can tell the difference between any of them, right? They're all interchangeable. So it's like, oh yeah, I saw Paul Allen in London. Oh yeah, Bateman was at that dinner. It's like, because it could be anybody, right? Could be Paul, Marcus Halberstram in both cases, but
it surely was. Yeah,
yes, fair enough. But yeah, then he is back. He picks up Christy again, who, and it's really actually one of the most disturbing scenes in the movie because she already kind of knows what she's getting into. It's a little unclear what all happened, but
she had to go to the emergency room. She said
she had to go to the emergency room. She was told that maybe she should get a lawyer, but he tempts her back with money, and so she comes back to Paul Allen's apartment, right? At this time, which, because that's a little point, because she's like, oh, this is nicer than the other apartment. He's like, well, it's not that much nicer. Yeah. But this time, as Touré says, he has this friend there, somebody who is from his own class, who's Elizabeth. And by the way, I mentioned earlier the Bret Easton Ellis extended universe, and this there is a moment here that ties into this in kind of a weird way. So I don't know, Okay, so Jason at least has read at least one Bret Easton Ellis novel. Jason, have you ever read any Jay McInerney? Okay, so most famously, McInerney wrote Bright Lights, Big City, which is
I've seen the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and he also wrote a book called Story of My Life, which is about this woman named Allison Poole. She's the main character in there, and who comes up, who's name checked in here. Like that's the character from the Jay McInerney novel.
Really?
Funny thing about Allison Poole, Jay McInerney, who is also, by the way, I mentioned Lunar Park earlier, which over on Twitter I mentioned Lunar Park to you. So Lunar Park is Ellis's like pseudo autobiographical horror novel about a writer named Bret Easton Ellis, and there's a Jay McInerney character in there who, at one very funny scene in that novel, they're in the garage snorting coke together on the hood of the car while McInerney lectures him about being a better husband and father. But Jay McInerney's novel Story of My Life, the main character in that, Allison Poole, who, remember the line in the scene with Elizabeth is she's like, it's something like Allison Poole, she'll blow you if you flash your Amex card or something like that.
Yeah.
It's along those lines.
She worked at a tanning salon. Need I say more?
Yeah. So that was
Platinum Amex, yeah.
So Allison Poole is, she's the main character in this book, and she basically snorts a lot of coke, and and hooks up with a lot of guys or whatever. Like it's an 80s excess novel. But the interesting thing about this is, flash forward to, it's like Story of My Life was probably put out like 1990 or something. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was McInerney's like third novel. But flash forward to 2008, and remember John Edwards, right? When he was, why he had to drop out, his run for president, because he was cheating on his wife while his wife had cancer and all that, right? Well, John Edwards' mistress also dated Jay McInerney back when, and by McInerney's admission, was the basis for this character, Allison Poole.
Really? Yeah, someone said that. Oh, no kidding. It ruined his political career?
No, totally ruined his political career. Yeah.
Wow.
What was the name of the woman? She had an unusual name, as I recall it.
Allison Poole?
No, the real life Allison Poole.
Oh, the real Hunter, I believe.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yep. So like that was like, I think at one point, like when the John Edwards political career was falling apart because of this, I believe the New York Post like dug up that novel and was like printing extracts like describing, so yeah, there you go. So Elizabeth is back at the apartment, and there's this very funny thing where she assumes that Christy is she assumes that Christy must be in their set, like somebody that she should recognize, she asks her where she's.
Where do you summer?
And like a typical like cokehead like that doesn't give a damn about the answer.
That's right.
Doesn't give a damn. Which I really appreciated the authenticity of that character.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And also tells when Patrick, when Patrick suggests that she should mess around with Christy, her initial, you talk about, I'm not a lesbian, and then you 30 seconds later, you flash forward to it actually happening.
Well, it was the Sarah Lawrence reference in between, so another name brand.
That was funny.
Yeah, and I thought of Jordan Peele, since he went to Sarah Lawrence, and as I said when we did Get Out, that one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about the tendency to view Get Out simply through the lens of race, it struck me that this was actually upscale white people's interest in consuming blackness, figurative black bodies or literal ones. In this particular case, the people that Jordan Peele would have gone to college with. That's who he's talking about at Sarah Lawrence.
Sorry, Ben, getting the sex bots.
Yeah, I know. They're really persistent tonight. I don't know what's up with
I don't know why, but what they're saying is really funny.
Fair enough.
This is in the comments.
Yeah, look at the comments.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, there have been like 30 of those things tonight, so they keep getting blocked, but they're resourceful.
Huh.
I guess these bots are a regular feature at TIR, but
Huh.
but yeah. Then there is so he kills Elizabeth in bed, and then Christy runs away, and there's this weird scene where he's chasing her with a chainsaw, and then she's eventually there's this there are like there's a couple minutes of ready or not in, running around and opening things up and whatever, and then she starts like running down the stairs of the the staircase.
But don't forget pounding on people's doors, yelling help, and no one responds.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is insane. This is still New York City. No one's responding to a woman screaming help, pounding on these what do you call those? I can't think of the word right now. Big apartment.
Penthouse?
Penthouse. These penthouse guys. Sorry. These
Kitty Genovese is what they were.
I was just thinking of Kitty Genovese, yeah. Who supposedly, I mean, I think this is questioned now, but like the sort of classic Kitty Genovese story is that
outside
she was stabbed to death while many people saw her from the balconies of their apartment and nobody helped her. Yeah, so there's this, but then there's this weird thing, which if it hasn't occurred to you yet at this point of the movie to wonder whether all this is happening, this would be a good moment for it to occur to you, because he kills her in this very unlikely way, right? That he drops the chainsaw into the stairwell and it just happens to hit her.
He running with the chainsaw.
He timed it. He's watching her run. There's an interesting scene because he's watching her intently and timing this for the drop, and it's completely unbelievable. But nevertheless, and in fact, it takes me back to Hollywood Shuffle. I believe a dude could jump off the side of a mountain with his mother and live to tell about it if he understood the laws of gravity and polarity and shit. He braced himself, right? So, but practically Bateman braced himself within that paradigm and timed the drop.
Well, he's running around
beautiful chainsaw.
But he's running around the complex,
right,
butt ass naked, with a chainsaw, with a woman screaming, and not one person opened the door, even to say "shut up."
Yeah, that's right.
I thought that was like, wow.
It wasn't happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will just go ahead and say, and we've teased this a little bit, but later in the movie they drop some very large hints that none of it really happened, and they do in the book. That there's like, I think it's kept somewhat ambiguous in the book, but it's pretty. The book nudges you pretty explicitly to wonder, if any of it really happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, there was no doubt that any of this happened. When I said it wasn't happening, it's as far as the residents were concerned. Like, they were just closed off and living in their own world. But all of this stuff happens. People in that world can't concede that someone, or imagine that someone from their class tier could do something like that, right? Hence the cleanup in the apartment later.
Well, yeah, the cleanup in the apartment, I thought, was kind of the thing that lets you know that at least that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we'll get to that. I should. Yeah. So there's the scene that we already mentioned where he breaks up with his fiance, and she has that priceless, amazing reaction. It's like, nah, I don't think it would work. Our friends are my friends are your friends. I think we got to stay together.
Like, damn, like that's the rationale. Not like you don't love me. Just
well, and that's the bookend to the first exchange, I think, between them when they're rewinding it, and they're in the cab, and he's listening to the new Robert Palmer tape. But Evelyn, my supposed fiance, keeps buzzing in my ear. She was going through the details of what a wedding would look like, Annie Leibovitz, and all this stuff. And Patrick, we should do it. Do what? Get married, have a wedding. No, I can't do it. And it was all about stuff.
Which by the way, there is an amazing line of dialogue that first scene in the car where she's talking about that, where he's like, "No, I can't." I can't take the time off work. Patrick, what do you mean you can't take time off work? Your dad practically owns the company, and by the way, not explicitly stated, you don't really do anything, right? Like, you're a vice president in charge of nothing, you just go to dinners. And he's like, no, but I can't because I need to fit in. And just the intense way he said, because I want to fit in, is amazing. One of the best parts of the movie. But in the bookended scene where he's breaking up with his fiance, going to everything you guys were just talking about, as he's talking to her and she's like prattling on about the wedding, he is doing this like crude, intense drawing on the tablecloth of like him killing someone. And neither she nor anyone else remarks on it, and this is like not the only. In fact, later on, Gene finds his like book where he's like done a bunch of these drawings, and it's like odd because she's the only one who has a normal reaction to it. Like she's like pouring through, it's like, what the fuck is this, right? But like, yeah, he could just do that on the tablecloth, and his fiance is like, oh, okay, I don't know what Patrick's doing, who cares?
She doesn't care. And I thought that was like super funny because a lot of that made me laugh, because I remember when those restaurants were still elite, where you had the crayons on the table, those restaurants, and her breakdown where she's screaming in the restaurant and he's more concerned about her screaming in the restaurant.
Yes.
And like making a scene of herself. And then she realizes at the end of the scene that she's just like, oh God, I just made a scene. Like, how do I get out? After she was flirting with another man.
Yeah.
Even more insane. Because that's how you get introduced to her. She doesn't know that I know she's having an affair.
Right.
With this guy, but I'm having an affair with her best friend. So
Courtney, who's almost perfect looking.
That's right.
Who is on one or more, psychotropic drugs at any time.
Who is so drugged up and out of it that he just takes her to some random restaurant and tells her it's Dorsia, and then tells her exactly what to order based on the restaurant reviews. Then she passes out. Yeah. So then we're into like the last 5 people or something he kills, because he has a scene which, as I was watching it, I realized was later ripped off in a X-Files episode I could remember from the mid-90s, where he's the ATM starts to give him evil messages. It says, feed me at stray cat. Yeah. And,
that was a good X-Files episode too.
It was, yeah. And then there's this like old woman who sees him, and Bateman shoots her, and then I don't even remember, but he ends up like he's like the cops chase him. He shoots a couple of the cops,
and they blow up like an action
car. Yeah, and he's perplexed, right? He shoots around, it hits the fuel tank, I guess, blows up the cop car, and then he looks at the gun and is like, what the fuck happened? Like, the world is his oyster, though. I mean, that's what's happening, right? I mean,
did you laugh at that scene when you saw it in the theater, Touré?
Fell out, and I was just perplexed by it, and delighted, and wondering how this was going to unfold, because around that point, like, and maybe it's right after that with the confession, I thought, whoa, how is this going to end? And when we get to the end, I started to think, well, this is going to be the greatest movie I've seen in a long time, or it's just going to suck. And the suck ending would be that if this just proved to be a dream.
Right.
And there was a lot of that kind of stuff. happened. Like Jacob's Ladder, I was just such a damn disappointment, and all this bullshit. But anyway, I thought the end of this film was perfect.
Well, let's get to it. So, so Bateman runs around. He goes on this rampage. You know, he kills like
blowing up cops left and
right. Woman. He kills a couple of cops. He kills the security guard.
In one tower of the World Trade Center, which was not the tower that he worked in. Right. So he killed that security guard. That security guard, I think, basically announces the fact that this is the wrong tower. And that guy, if I recall correctly, Mr. Smith, burning the midnight hour tonight, Mr. Smith. Bang! And then he goes to the other tower, which was and then when he gets to the front desk, he reaches into his coat and you think he's going to cap this one, and he pulls out his pen and signs in.
Yes. Yeah.
And then makes his way up to his office, of course.
Yeah. And he has meanwhile, the sort of middle of this whole thing, he's called his lawyer. He gives this detailed confession of all of his crimes.
Which even sounds like a bit of a farce. I killed 20 or 40 people. I don't know. I ate one of them.
That's not normally something one should laugh at, right? Oh, I ate one of them.
Well, when he bit homegirl's leg, he bit the shit out of her leg.
Right. Christy.
Yeah, Christy's leg.
And then Christy kicks him in the face, and he's like, "Not the face."
Oh, that's what did it for her.
Yeah. Well, she was already done, but
imagine if Bateman were black. That movie's called Strictly Business, and it's starring Tommy Davidson and Halle Berry.
I just like the thought of somebody doing that. Well, if you were black, that's the conversation you're all not ready to have. He confesses to killing. He's tried so hard to be exact, but he also doesn't care very much about any of this, so he can't quite remember. He's like, 20 people, 40 people. I ate like a couple of them, maybe. I don't know.
Paul Allen is dissolving in a bathtub and acid in a bathtub and wherever.
Hell's Kitchen.
That's right.
Next to Dare.
So yeah. And then he has, he's made it up he's made it up to he calls the office, right? And Gene's like, since you don't have a job, none of this is going to be related to any like work, but but you do have like some people are having lunch. They want to come have lunch, like that's all she ever relays to him and stuff like that. And so he thinks he's not going to make it. He's like on the verge of hysteria, but he pulls himself together, and he makes it out to meet his friends for lunch. I think they might be getting like pre-lunch drinks or something, but they have
I want to go reservations.
Yeah. There's the whole conversation. I'm not going anywhere without a reservation. I don't just show up at restaurants. Okay, I need a reservation. And he sees the lawyer there, who doesn't believe him for several reasons that all have to do with the fact he can't tell the difference between any of them. That he doesn't realize that he is Patrick Bateman. He thinks he's one of the other ones, and that it was a joke that he was playing Patrick Bateman, admitting to all these murders. And anyway, I had lunch with Paul Allen myself twice, and
10 days ago. Yeah,
that's right. And then just in case anybody missed that the whole thing is supposed to be a critique of Reaganism, it ends with them watching Reagan on TV and talking about him as if Reagan is Patrick Bateman.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes this genius, because was it Bryce? Bryce is the only one that Bateman kind of respected. says something like, "How can it be so cold about it?" Right, and this is a Ron Contra or whatever, and Reagan's clearly lying, but Price says on that front, he presents himself as this harmless old codger. But inside, and then Bateman's voice comes in and says, "But inside doesn't matter." And that makes clear what this is fundamentally about, and I think is along with the cleanup, makes plain that this is not a dream. It's just that none of these people matter, practically.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the cleanup. So this was, I think this was a slightly strange scene that he's going back to Paul Allen's apartment, which is being shown to prospective tenants, and he has a very odd conversation with the real estate agent, or whoever it is, right? Like, I guess the woman who's showing the apartment.
Well, that's a great scene where she goes, are you my 2 o'clock? And he's like, 2 o'clock. She goes, oh, did you see the ad in the Times? And he's like, ad in the Times? Yeah, I saw the ad in the Times. She goes, there was no ad in the Times. You need to leave.
Yeah, I mean, she knew.
Did I freeze?
You did.
Oh, okay. Weird.
All right,
so
you're
where
on
did I freeze at?
Oh, no. Your voice continued. Your image just.
Oh, my voice continued, but I froze. Okay, I apologize.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, she says, all right, there was no ad in the Times. You need to leave.
Yeah, so that to me implied, oh, okay, that all this really happened, because if you look at, there was a huge remake of the apartment. And he's very confused, and his first, we talked about this earlier, the apartment overlooked the park. It's a very expensive apartment, so of course they're going to rent it out.
And he goes in with his KN95 mask or whatever, expecting.
No, that's clearly a KN95 mask. Right? I thought about that. I was watching it. He didn't. It's not quite. He's not quite wearing it in a COVID appropriate way. He hasn't right. But yeah, that's clearly a KN95. So yeah, he goes into it with the KN95 mask. He's clearly intending on doing some cleanup himself. Which at first, the fact that the closet where there were bodies hanging is empty and all that stuff sort of suggests like, oh, maybe none of this happened. But then the conversation with that woman suggests that she knows who he is. And that it did happen.
That's what I thought when I saw it. I was like, oh, maybe the cop car blowing up doesn't happen, but maybe he does kill all those people.
Well, I read it as she assumed that he had something to do with it, but that the family presumed that it was Paul, because it's Paul's apartment where all of these bodies would have been found. And because if Paul were found out to be what Bateman is, that would obviously be a stain on the family. And all that matters for all of these people is appearances. So they had to just literally whitewash this for the good of the family. So Paul's gone. Like, Paul is gone, dead in the vat of acid in Hell's Kitchen. But as far as the family's concerned, he's gone. It's as if he never existed.
Which is even more crazy, right?
Hey, I mean, he's got all the stank of dead hookers on him. Right? I mean, you're blue bloods. You can't have the stank of dead hookers on you.
Hanging in the closet.
Hanging in the closet, like suits. Where his suits were, probably.
You don't think Biden has called in a few apartments full of dead hookers so they could, they could take care of it? I mean, it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, you're just gonna do that.
I think the State Department didn't want your statement to get out, so you were all sidelined.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, it sounded like. Yeah, you were Transformer talk. What happened? What did you say?
Sound wave over here.
Yeah,
like that scene to me was interesting. I don't know, the whole movie with the ambiguity of the ending, I think is really cool, especially when the people that put it together, like, yeah, we did it on purpose because we don't know.
It's so thought-provoking, though, right? I mean, it's like some of the best movies, maybe all of the best movies, have an open-ended ending that leaves you pondering where this story is going to go. The Thing, we did The Thing, and we talked about how the original the ending that the studio liked anyway, which would have basically been on a happy note and unambiguous, also implausible, I might add, even for The Thing. That John Carpenter, to his credit, his artistic vision, he stuck to, and we get this brilliant, ambiguous ending, which is one of the things that makes that film so good. And of course, American Psycho, much the same thing. And in both films, that basically the bad guy is still around, right? So the question is, where do we go from here with this bad guy? And it's over, and that's life.
Where you go from here with the bad guy? 2008.
Okay.
Like, remember, at this point there's
so Obama's the bad guy.
Savings and you got savings and loan scandals going on in this time period that we're talking about with this movie. You have
so the crash is the
junk bonds happening. This is also supposed to happen before Black Monday, right? So how far does it go? Derivatives.
Okay. Yeah.
Because again, people, there's actually always real people, not just dead sex workers and dead useless nameless VPs of companies, but millions of people are definitely devastated. Whole sectors of America become devastated due to a lot of these people.
Yeah.
And they just don't care. They're never going to see it. New York is decaying around them to a certain degree. And it never affects them. He's walking around at night. Like, of course I'm walking around at night. This is the murder capital of America. Yeah, not there it is, not here.
Well, and it's funny you say this. I was talking to my wife about this before the show, and she's a fan of the film. I will tell you that there were a few movies that I would show on dates just to kind of see if this was likely to work out.
Psycho?
And American Psycho was one of them. Yeah.
You managed to get married.
It wasn't like the first date, shit. But
that's gotta be a really know you date.
Oh man. But being there in American Psycho were definitely two of the big ones. But I was telling her about a friend of mine. I'm gonna obscure just a little bit, who was a graduate of an Ivy League university in the mid to late 1990s, who at 23 got a job in HR at a major corporation. She had interned at this corporation, I think her sophomore and junior years. And early on at this fancy job that a 23 or 24-year-old had, she was tasked with a downsizing project and was basically eliminating internal customer service and moving toward external, right? Outsourcing customer service. And conversation I had with her, which was very alarming for me personally because of my connection with this person. She described what she was doing as giving these people a kick in their complacency. In other words, that the employees there were better than this job. And many of them were college grads. And this is in the Northeast corridor. And that really, since they could do better than the job, eliminating the job would really, nudge them to fulfill their promise. And when she said this to me, I was really dismayed and infuriated, and pointed out to her in my the 1 year of my 20s that I wasn't in school, I worked in a similar position. I was a dispatcher at the Orleans Parish Sewage and Water Board, which meant, it sounds better than it was, but it meant that I did some part customer service, right? My customer service was taking complaints from people with sewage or water problems, and then, dispatching the work order to inspectors to determine what the issue is. But that's customer service, right? And from her, as just someone I'd held in high esteem, what was so alarming is how quickly she drank the Kool-Aid, because it paid really well, her job, right? So how bad could it be? And it probably wasn't cool to me as a friend to say, oh my God. I mean, I didn't liken her to Oscar Schindler, but I was like, oh, like, how can you think this way? Right. maybe to her credit, this was kind of a way for her to rationalize what she was doing. But the thing that didn't jump out at me then, I was like 26 or 27, was how fucked up it is that you've got a 23-year-old involved in a project, you know, an Ivy League educated 23-year-old. But that's the point, right? Involved in a project that's about putting people out of work. And what could she have known about this work they were doing? Oh, I know nothing, practically, because she had just recently graduated from college. But there it is, right? People are just
she's disconnected from the fact that these people might have families and they might have more.
Right. Yeah.
You don't get the same reason why you want young kids, being drone operators. It's just Call of Duty for you.
And if you make a decent salary or get another stripe or whatever, if you garner accolades for this horrible shit and or wealth, how bad could it be, right? How bad is anything that pays you well and is affirming? Well, it can be horrendous. I don't know, Nazi Germany. But but nevertheless, as you interpret it as the beneficiary, right, who's tasked with doing this, it doesn't seem that bad to you, Booker T. Washington. I had to go there, right? I mean, you know why I had to go there. I'm not
yeah. I mean,
I would not say elite. That the elite has captured identity politics. That was the point of identity politics from the start. Booker T. Washington. So anyway,
yeah, that's a book that just came out, right? That like how the elite captured identity politics. That's the title of a book that just came out.
Yeah, Haymarket will never give us an author now.
What? They didn't say hardly anything.
I mean, we should go for the patron half hour if it wasn't so late where you guys are and just talk shit. I'd DoorDash you guys some beers just to watch you guys talk shit about that.
Oh, I keep beer. that began in the pandemic.
He's like, I'm dead.
The lockdown, I was like one of the few times I left my house during lockdown was to go to the liquor store, and I don't even drink, but I do drink beer. So there.
Yeah, I used to. I do drink, and when I had and when I was like at the sort of height of lockdown, where like every time, especially, we didn't know as much about the virus back then, and so everybody, I think like a lot of people, I'd gotten a little Howard Hughes about it, but and so it's like, going to the grocery store felt like, it was a big ordeal, like to deal with that. So like when I went to the liquor store, like, I mean, I drink, but I mean, like, I don't drink as much as I seemed like I did when I go to the liquor store, because I'd be like, all right, I got to stock up for the next 3 months,
Right. Yeah, you had to load up. I finished all my bottles when I got home, like in the earliest days, because you didn't know how.
Ben Touré sent me a New York Mag article about someone.
Oh, let's not.
And he did it at 4 a.m. And
it was 5. It was 5 a.m. your time. I said it at 7 mine.
30.
All right. I'll accept that. Split the difference.
Because it's a 2-hour difference.
Yeah. So I thought I sent it at 7, but you tell me I sent it at 6:30 my time. All right.
30.
Okay. Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. He's not calling, so that means he's either busy or working out. I'm gonna leave him voice messages until he calls.
It was hysterical.
I yelled into his phone for at least 35 minutes.
Yeah, it was great. One after the next. It was like a tweet thread, a hostile tweet thread. I
was like, great. Man, fuck this, dude.
And he said that too. This is to me and the subject. Oh,
you want to do a patron half hour? I'll do patron half hour.
I didn't even realize this wasn't on Patreon. So okay.
Do I have to order you beer?
No, I've got some beer.
Okay. Can we just make fun of that shit for like 25 minutes?
Yeah,
I'll let you do it. I'm gonna
watch. So we'll do that. Send out the link in a minute. But What do you before we end the public stream? You have some sense of what you might want to watch in June?
Oh, well, let's see. We talked about just now Night of the Comet, but I don't know how much.
We got to find a canon film. We got to find a canon.
Was that a canon film? Night of the Comet?
Night of the Comet was canon film.
Okay. So they did at least 2 of those, right? Because you've got Night of the Comet, 2 of those Halley's Comet inspired films. The other one, oh wait, no, that was New Line. My bad, it wasn't canon. Was the one we were talking about at the start.
We're talking about at the start.
Damn it. The one with the comet with the vampires. Life Force.
Ooh. I'm afraid to watch Life Force. I don't want Ben to get any kind of pushback.
Well, and I have a job, so I'm good with not getting pushback. But what was that, canon or New Line? I thought Life Force was New Line.
Someone says that Sarah Jessica Parker movie Jason showed Pascal. I showed Pascal spinning in the butter. Have you ever seen the play Spinning in the Butter? Ben? Touré, you don't know Spinning in the
No.
I can't do that to you guys. It would be funny, but Touré would get really angry.
So we're keeping it horror.
I would like to keep it horror.
How about 28 Weeks Later, which was a nice commentary on
No,
we talked about it, but then we
talked about it. We never did it.
Get Out, I think, instead. But it's a nice commentary on the occupation in Iraq. I mean, kind of a nice commentary.
Oh well, look, I think Touré has actually pitched 28 Weeks Later a few times, so I'd be happy to do that in June if you're in a good
weeks or days. 28 days. Oh, weeks. Okay.
I think they're both great. I enjoy them both.
Yeah, I mean, 28 Days Later I think is probably a better movie, but 28 Weeks Later might be more interesting to talk about.
What about Sunshine? Didn't Danny Boyle do Sunshine too?
Yeah, he was in that. Sorry, yeah. And there's overlap.
You didn't like Sunshine?
It was okay. I didn't think it was terrible, but it didn't thrill me.
I mean, there's so many movies like that.
Well, that's true. That's true. Alien,
I think Life Force is really well done for what it is, and it's
the halfway point. It's well done for
it's a Toby Hooper film, and I think Toby Hooper gets slept on because we only associate him with the Texas Chainsaw. We forget that he did
Salem Plot.
Yeah,
that was really well done for a TV movie.
I dig some of Hooper's stuff.
Yeah,
we should pick a director. Pick a director, Ben.
But
I say we should have a battle on which.
But I mean, my first thought would be Wes Craven. I don't know.
Yeah, we should battle Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and then Jason Part 5, which is better.
Which was Jason Part 5?
The final chapter.
That was 4.
Oh, is that this
4? I'm sorry, 4. 4 is I think the best.
I'll tell you what will work for me with that, and it's just completely idiosyncratic. Ooh, Evil Dead would be good. The only Friday the 13th movie I'd ever seen in a theater was 4, and the only Nightmare on Elm Street movie I'd ever seen in the movie theater was 3. So for me, that would have a nostalgic appeal. Evil Dead 2 is good.
People Under the Stairs is great. That's great. It plays like a 90s movie, but the commentary it's pretty
good. What about the remake of The Hills Have Eyes?
That was great.
That's what I would vote for. Remake of The Hills Have Eyes. And Jason, I know he knows a lot about that movie too. Or at least he will.
High Tension. High Tension is the other. I think those guys did High Tension first.
High Tension was brutal, but I prefer The Hills Have Eyes, the remake. Anyway,
I have a very long list of horror stuff that is on my I get different movies here in Mexico than you guys get in the States. So there's a lot of stuff you guys can watch I can't watch.
Damn NAFTA.
Okay, well, is the Hills Have Eyes something you could watch in Mexico?
Sometimes I have to pay for it, but yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Or I have to watch it on my iPad because I can put a VPN on this, not the TV. But yeah, let's do Hills Have Eyes remake. You want to do it? You want to do it back and like watch both?
No. I hate the cinematography of the original. I can't do it.
And have you guys watched Cursed Films on Amazon, on Shudder? Cursed Films.
Oh yeah.
Have you watched
We
the season
talked
2?
about it.
But have you seen season 2?
I don't think I have.
Because there's an interesting movie on there that I think we have to watch at some point. This Russian film that I think we have to watch at some point.
Okay, a Russian film.
Russian film.
Okay, what's it called?
I think it's called like The Hunter or The Stalker or something like that.
Okay.
Can we wait till war in Ukraine is over?
I mean, we could try to get those good Ukraine clicks now.
Yeah, there you go. I was, yeah, it seems much less funny now, but when I was back in like a couple months ago, I was on Naomi Caravani interviewed me on on RT about the last book that I wrote, and I joked to several people that like I really hoped that they held off and didn't invade Ukraine until after the day that I was on the I was on the network, but yeah. Okay, so sounds good. So let's do Hills Have Eyes in June. I have should say people who are not going to follow us into the patron half hour that we will be back tomorrow night for actually the season finale for GTAA. We've got Sam Cedar on. Should be a really good show. So check that out and give me just a minute to post the link, and if Jason wants, he could also send the link to TIR.
Oh, dope. Okay, hey, yeah. TIR patrons, we can watch the same thing, and also June 26th, Ben and I will be in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
For the Sublation media launch. I totally forgot the name of it. We came up with a title for what it's gonna be about, and
yeah.
The do's and don'ts of the whole thing. So I'm actually really excited about it, and I can't wait to hang out in New York with Ben. So
yeah, no, looking forward to it. So all right, well, sounds good. So we'll leave it there. We'll see some of you in like 2 minutes, and everybody else tomorrow night. Left is best.